On the quiet planet of Veron, far from the crowded cities of the galaxy, lived a retired chef named Elias. He had once been famous across the stars for his cooking. People would travel light years just to taste his dishes. But now Elias preferred a simple life. He had left the fame, the busy kitchens, and the constant rush behind. In his small wooden home at the edge of a green valley, he cooked only for himself. Every morning, Elias would wake to the soft sunlight streaming through his window. Birds sang, and small animals scurried near his home. He liked the peace. He liked the slow rhythm of life. He had a small garden where he grew herbs and vegetables. His meals were simple, but they reminded him of happier days. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, Elias was finishing his dinner. Suddenly, a strange sound came from outside, a low, painful roar that made his chest tighten. He froze. It wasn't the sound he had heard before. It was loud, but weak at the same time, like someone or something was in pain. Elias hesitated. Should he go outside? Most people would ignore strange noises in the night, but something inside him, maybe curiosity, maybe old instinct, made him grab a lantern and step into the cool night air. The valley was quiet except for the sound of the roar. He followed it, moving carefully through the tall grass. The stars shone brightly above, but the darkness around him was thick. Then he saw it. A creature unlike any he had ever seen crouched near the edge of the forest. It was huge, taller than a house, with scales that shimmered like dark emerald. Its eyes were closed, and it shivered. Its body was thin, almost too thin for its size, and Elias could see the ribs under its skin. The dragon, or whatever it was clearly starving. Elias's heart pounded. He had read about alien dragons in old galactic stories, but he had never imagined seeing one in real life. Yet here it was, trembling in front of him, weak and vulnerable. He wanted to run. Everyone would say he was crazy if he tried to help. But he couldn't. Something about the creature called to him. Maybe it was the pain he saw in its eyes, or the quiet dignity of its massive body. He took a deep breath. "I won't hurt you," Elias said softly, though he knew the dragon might not understand him. He slowly reached into his pocket and took out a small piece of bread from his meal. He knelt a few steps away, placing it on the ground. The dragon opened one eye and looked at him, its gaze curious, almost intelligent. For a long moment it didn't move. Then, with surprising speed, it stretched its neck and gently took the bread from the ground. Elias held his breath. Its teeth were sharp, but it ate carefully, as if it knew he meant no harm. Over the next few hours, Elias fed the dragon small pieces of food from his kitchen. Vegetables, bread, even bits of meat he had saved from earlier meals. With each bite, the dragon grew a little stronger. Its scales began to shine faintly, and its breathing became steadier. But Elias noticed something strange. As the dragon ate, small sparks of light seemed to travel along its body. At first, he thought it was just his imagination. But then, a flower near the dragon bloomed instantly, and the air around them felt warmer, almost alive. Elias stepped back, startled. Could it be that the dragon had some kind of power? He had heard legends about alien dragons, creatures who could influence life around them. Could this be true? The dragon finished the last piece of food and curled up near the edge of the forest. Its eyes, now fully open, glowed softly in the night. It looked at Elias, not with hunger, but with something else. Recognition? Gratitude? He couldn't tell. That night, Elias could not sleep. He kept thinking about the dragon, about the strange energy he had felt. He wondered where it had come from, and why it had ended up in his valley. And most importantly, he wondered if anyone else in the galaxy knew it existed. By dawn, the dragon had disappeared. Elias searched the valley, but there was no sign of it. He felt a strange emptiness in his heart, but he also felt hope. He knew he had done the right thing by helping it, and somehow he felt that their paths would cross again. Days passed, but the memory of the dragon stayed with him. Strange things began happening around his home. Plants in his garden grew faster and healthier than ever. The water in the stream seemed clearer. Even the animals seemed more energetic. He didn't understand it, but he felt that it was connected to the dragon. One evening, as he sat by his kitchen window, a shadow passed over the valley. Elias felt a chill. Something or someone was watching. He remembered the stories of galactic authorities who monitored powerful creatures, looking for those they could control. Could they have sensed the dragon? He looked up at the sky, stars twinkling as if hiding secrets. Somewhere out there, the dragon lived. Somewhere out there, it was waiting. And Elias knew, deep in his heart, that his quiet life was about to change forever. The sun rose over the valley, painting it with golden light. Elias prepared breakfast, but he felt different. He wasn't just a retired chef anymore. He was part of something bigger, something that could change the galaxy. And somewhere, far above the valley, the dragon watched too. His hunger was gone, but curiosity remained. It remembered the human who had shown it kindness. And in the vast universe, that small act of compassion could start something extraordinary. Elias did not know it yet, but the galaxy's history was about to be rewritten. A retired chef and a starving alien dragon had met, and together, they would spark a chain of events no one could have imagined. The wind rustled through the valley. The stars shone brighter than ever. And for the first time in years, Elias felt the thrill of adventure in his heart. Days passed since Elias first met the alien dragon. The memory of its glowing eyes and the strange sparks of life it brought lingered in his mind. His quiet valley now felt alive in a way he had never experienced before. Flowers bloomed brighter, the stream glistened clearer, and the animals moved with an unusual energy. But the dragon had vanished after that first night. Elias tried to focus on his daily routine, chopping vegetables, tending to his garden, and cooking small meals for himself. Yet he could not shake the feeling that the dragon was out there, watching, waiting. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a shadow fell across his doorstep. Elias looked up and froze. There it was, the dragon, larger and more majestic than before. Its scales shimmered like emerald fire, and its eyes glowed with intelligence. It was thin still, but its strength was growing. Elias felt a mix of fear and wonder. "You're back," he whispered. The dragon tilted its head, as if acknowledging him. It did not attack. Instead, it lowered its massive head, eyes fixed on him, waiting. He realized that the creature was hungry. It had survived the past days, but it needed food again. Elias knew he had to act carefully. One wrong move, and this magnificent beast could crush him without thinking. He stepped inside and began to prepare a meal. He used his old recipes, the ones that had once brought him fame, but he simplified them for the dragon's alien palate. He cooked vegetables, small bits of meat, and even a sweet fruit from his garden. He worked quickly but carefully, all the while keeping an eye on the dragon outside. When he carried the meal outside, the dragon followed his every movement. It crouched low, eyes fixed on the plates, nostrils flaring. Elias placed the food on the ground and stepped back, holding his breath. For a long moment the dragon did nothing. Then, slowly, it reached out its claw and touched the plate. Elias tensed, ready to react. But the dragon did not strike. It sniffed the food, circling it like a careful animal. Finally, it took a small bite. Elias exhaled. The dragon chewed slowly, savoring the food. It ate with surprising gentleness, careful not to spill or crush anything. The retired chef watched in amazement. He had never fed anything so large and powerful before. Yet he felt a strange bond forming between them. As the dragon ate, Elias noticed something extraordinary. The air around them seemed warmer, almost alive. Small sparks of light danced along the dragon's scales, and the plants near them seemed to grow taller, stronger. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter with each bite. Elias realized that this was no ordinary creature. The dragon was not only intelligent, it had powers beyond imagination, and somehow his food was helping it regain strength. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the forest behind them. Elias turned quickly, heart racing. A group of strange, metallic creatures had appeared. They looked like robots, but their movements were too fluid to be machines. Their eyes glowed red, scanning the valley. The dragon hissed, a low, threatening sound that made Elias shiver. The metallic beings stopped a few meters away, watching. Elias understood immediately they had come for the dragon. He stepped in front of the plates, facing the creatures. "Leave it alone," he shouted, though his voice trembled. The creatures did not respond. They were not here to negotiate. They had orders: capture or destroy. The dragon, sensing danger, reared up. Its wings stretched wide, casting a shadow over the valley. Elias felt a thrill of fear and awe. The dragon was huge, powerful, and intelligent. But could it fight off these strange invaders? Then Elias remembered something. The first time he had fed the dragon, strange things had happened. The plants had grown, the air had felt alive. Maybe, just maybe, feeding the dragon could do more than restore its strength. It could help them both survive. He grabbed another plate of food and held it out. "Eat," he whispered. The dragon hesitated, then took a bite. Immediately, sparks of light surged along its body, brighter than ever before. The plants near the valley exploded in growth, creating a wall of thick vines and flowers that blocked the metallic creatures. Elias's heart raced. It was working. The dragon's power, fueled by his food, was protecting them. The creatures tried to push through the growing vines, but they could not. Elias realized that the dragon was not just hungry. It was becoming stronger, smarter, and more in control of its abilities. For hours, Elias continued to feed the dragon, each bite making the creatures retreat further. He felt a strange connection to the dragon, as if they were sharing thoughts without speaking. He could sense its gratitude, its trust, and something else, a plan forming in its mind. Finally, the creatures gave up. With a final hiss, the dragon spread its wings and took off into the night sky, leaving Elias standing alone in the glowing valley. He watched it disappear, feeling both relief and anticipation. The next morning, Elias could not stop thinking about the events of the night. He had seen the dragon's power firsthand. He had faced a threat that could have destroyed him and survived. And he realized something incredible. His simple act of feeding a starving alien dragon had not only saved it, but it had started to change the valley, maybe even the planet itself. Elias returned to his small kitchen, hands still shaking. He cooked breakfast slowly, savoring each movement. He knew that this was just the beginning. The dragon would return. And when it did, they would face challenges far greater than a few metallic creatures. As he worked, he noticed a faint glow outside. He stepped to the window and saw a small spark of light in the distance, moving with purpose. It was a sign. The dragon had remembered him. It was coming back. Elias smiled, feeling a thrill he had not felt in years. His quiet life was over. Adventures awaited. Danger awaited. But also wonder, friendship, and something greater than anything he had ever imagined. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries, and Elias had just taken his first step into the unknown. A simple meal had sparked a connection that could change everything. And somewhere, far above the planet, the dragon soared through the night sky, thinking of the human who had shown it kindness. The bond between them was stronger than any star, stronger than any law of the galaxy. Elias did not know it yet, but the first meal he had shared with the dragon had set events in motion that could alter the fate of the universe. He would soon discover that feeding a starving alien dragon was not just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of a cosmic revolution. The days following the dragon's first return were unlike anything Elias had ever experienced. The valley, once quiet and predictable, now seemed alive in ways he could barely understand. Plants grew taller and greener. Streams ran clearer and faster. Birds sang louder, and even the small animals in his garden moved with new energy. Elias knew it was no ordinary change. He also knew the dragon was behind it. Its presence had altered the very life around him, though it had not been seen for hours at a time. He spent each day tending his garden and preparing meals, but he could not shake the feeling that something extraordinary was happening, something he did not fully understand. One evening, As the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange and purple, Elias noticed a flicker of light in the distance. He followed it cautiously, lantern in hand. Hidden among the tall grass was the dragon, its scales shimmering like molten emerald. It had returned, hungry again, but this time it moved with confidence. Its eyes glowed brighter than before, and the faint sparks of light along its body pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Elias placed the food on the ground and stepped back, watching closely. As the dragon ate, the valley around them began to change again. Flowers that had been wilted now burst into full bloom. Trees stretched taller as if reaching for the sky. Small streams of water glimmered with an unusual light, flowing faster and clearer. The air itself felt charged with energy, vibrating with a subtle hum that made the hair on Elias's arms stand on end. It's alive," Elias whispered, but he didn't mean the dragon. He meant the valley, the very air, the life around him. Something was awakening. Suddenly, he heard a voice, not in words, but in feeling. A calm, gentle vibration in his mind. He froze, heart pounding. The dragon's eyes were locked on him, and he realized that it was communicating. Not with words, but with thoughts. Images and feelings flashed in his mind. Hunger, fear, gratitude, and power. A power beyond anything Elias had ever known. The dragon had grown stronger since the first meal. Its abilities were not just physical. They were connected to life itself. Elias watched in awe as a withered tree near the stream suddenly burst into leaf and flower, as if the dragon's presence had healed it. The valley shimmered with energy, pulsing softly under the dragon's influence. Elias felt a thrill and a chill. The dragon was magnificent, but its power was growing fast. Could anyone else control or stop it? He had heard stories of galactic authorities, organizations that monitored powerful beings and creatures. If they discovered the dragon, it might not survive. The thought made his stomach tighten. For the next several days, Elias observed subtle changes everywhere. His meals, once ordinary, now seemed to amplify the dragon's abilities. Every time it ate, life around them thrived even more. Crops that had failed for years grew in abundance. Animals that had been sick recovered quickly. The valley seemed almost magical. But not all signs were gentle. One night, a small meteor fell near the edge of the valley. The dragon rose instantly, wings spreading wide, and with a roar, it sent the meteor spinning safely into the distant hills. Elias stared in shock. The dragon's power was not just life. It was energy, force, and intelligence beyond human understanding. That night, he sat by the fire, thinking. This dragon was not just a creature. It was something ancient, something powerful, something the galaxy had forgotten. And it had chosen him, a retired chef, as its companion and guide. The responsibility weighed heavily on him. One wrong move could end in disaster. Days later, villagers from a nearby settlement came to Elias, curious about the strange changes. They spoke of fields growing overnight, water turning pure, and animals acting strangely. Elias explained only part of it, careful not to reveal too much. They would not understand the dragon, and if word spread too far, outsiders could come. One evening, as Elias was preparing another meal, the dragon approached him differently. It did not bow its head to eat. Instead, it hovered slightly above the ground, eyes focused and glowing. Elias felt a pull in his mind again. A thought, a command, a question. The dragon wanted to test him, to see if he could handle the power it possessed. He placed the food down and stepped back, feeling both fear and excitement. The dragon circled slowly, then stopped, breathing in the scent of the meal. As it ate, Elias noticed the valley respond in new ways. Water from the stream leapt into the air, forming sparkling arcs that reflected the moonlight. Flowers turned toward him, as if acknowledging his role. Even the wind seemed to shift, carrying a soft, musical hum. Elias realized something incredible. The dragon's abilities were growing with each meal, and so was their connection. Could sense his thoughts, his intentions, his fears, and he could sense its trust, its intelligence, its curiosity. Together, they were forming a bond that went beyond friendship, a bond that could change the galaxy. But danger was near. One night, as Elias slept, a faint glow appeared on the horizon. Ships, sleek, black, and silent, approached from the stars. He awoke to the sound of faint humming, the air vibrating with energy. These were not ordinary travelers. They were the Watchers, the galactic authorities, seeking powerful beings to control or destroy. Elias felt fear for the first time in days. The dragon, sensing the threat, rumbled low, its eyes glowing fiercely. The valley itself seemed to respond to the threat, vines twisting and growing as a natural barrier. Elias knew they could not run. They would have to face this new danger together. He realized the true test had begun. The dragon's powers were awakening, yes, but could they be controlled, guided, and used wisely? Elias, a simple retired chef, would now play a role no human had ever played: protector, guide, and companion to one of the galaxy's most powerful and mysterious creatures. The night was still, but the stars above seemed to watch, twinkling as if holding secrets. Elias prepared another meal, knowing the dragon would need strength. The bond between them had grown. He had seen the valley respond to the dragon's energy, seen its intelligence, and understood its needs. But he also knew that the galaxy's eyes were upon them, and somewhere in the distant stars the Watchers were making plans. They had sensed the rising power and the strange events in the valley. They would not ignore it. The dragon, Elias, and the life around them were about to become the focus of a galactic mystery. A mystery that could change the fate of planets, civilizations, and perhaps even the universe itself. Elias took a deep breath, placing the food before the dragon. As it ate, sparks of light danced along its scales, illuminating the valley. The stars above seemed to shine brighter. The air hummed with life, and Elias understood one simple truth. The first meal had awakened more than hunger. It had awakened destiny. The dragon looked at him, eyes glowing, as if sharing the same thought. Together, they would face the unknown, and together, they would discover the true extent of powers that had lain hidden for eons. The valley held its breath, the night waited silently, and the galaxy, though unaware, was about to witness a power long forgotten, but never lost. The valley had never been quieter, yet Elias could feel a tension in the air that he could not explain. For days, everything had seemed to thrive under the dragon's presence. Plants grew tall and green, water sparkled like liquid crystal, and animals roamed freely. But that night, the wind whispered a warning, carrying an unfamiliar chill. Elias had just finished preparing a meal for the dragon when he saw it. Glowing lights moving across the sky. They were not stars. They were ships, sleek, dark, and silent, cutting through the night like shadows. The hum of engines reached his ears faintly, but it was enough. He knew immediately who they were: the galactic authorities. These were no ordinary travelers. These were the Watchers, the enforcers who monitored the galaxy for creatures of unusual power. Stories had been told of their ruthlessness. Planets had fallen under their control, and those who resisted often vanished without a trace. And now they had come for the dragon. Elias's heart pounded. He ran outside, and his eyes met the dragon's. The creature sensed the danger immediately, its eyes glowing brighter and wings unfurling in a defensive stance. Its tail lashed the ground, shaking loose stones and stirring the trees. Elias knew this was no time to hesitate. The dragon trusted him. He had to act. From the sky, the ships descended slowly, sending beams of light that scanned the valley. Mechanical voices, cold and emotionless, called out in a language Elias could not understand. He could only guess their orders. Capture the dragon. Control it. Take it away. Stay calm, he whispered to the dragon. Though he barely believed his own words, he grabbed another plate of food and approached the creature. The dragon shifted slightly but did not attack him. Elias felt a rush of relief. Its trust had not been broken. As the dragon ate, sparks of light began to surge along its scales. The energy radiated outward, and the valley responded. Vines twisted into barriers, trees bent to block paths, and rocks levitated slightly, forming an irregular wall. Elias watched in awe. The dragon's power, fueled by his food, had become a shield. The galactic authorities were not deterred. They deployed smaller drones that moved quickly, attempting to break through the natural defenses. Elias felt fear for the first time in his life. These were beings of immense power, and the dragon's abilities, though extraordinary, were still unknown even to him. Suddenly, one of the drones broke through a vine wall, landing heavily on the ground. Elias grabbed a nearby branch, ready to defend the dragon. But before he could act, the dragon exhaled a low, rumbling growl. The ground shook, and the drone was flung backward, spinning helplessly into the trees. Elias's mouth dropped open. The dragon's control over the environment was far stronger than he had imagined. But he knew this was only the beginning. More drones were descending, faster and in greater numbers. Elias realized they could not rely on force alone. They needed strategy. He began to move, placing food strategically around the dragon, hoping each meal would fuel its strength and sharpen its focus. The dragon ate with precision, sparks of light pulsing brighter each time. Suddenly, the valley seemed to awaken fully. The streams of water rose into the air like sparkling ribbons, cutting off paths for the drones. Trees bent and twisted to shield the dragon. Animals from the surrounding woods appeared, drawn by the energy, helping to confuse and distract the invaders. Elias realized something important. The dragon's power was not just physical. It was connected to life itself. And through their bond, he could guide it, focusing its abilities on defense rather than destruction. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The valley was alive with movement, color, and sound. A whirlwind of natural energy against the cold, mechanical precision of the invaders. Elias felt exhausted but determined. They could not allow the dragon to be captured. Not now. Not ever. Finally, the last drone faltered. The dragon, breathing heavily, glowed with a faint golden light, signaling the end of the immediate threat. Elias approached cautiously, laying down the final plate of food. The dragon lowered its head, eyes meeting his. No words were needed. They had survived together. But Elias knew it was only temporary. The galactic authorities would not give up easily. They had seen the dragon's abilities and would surely return, stronger and more prepared. Elias's simple life had ended. He was now a guardian, a strategist, and an unlikely hero in a cosmic battle that had only just begun. The night was calm again, but the stars above seemed different. More distant ships flickered, as if observing from afar. Elias realized the valley was no longer just his home. It was a focal point, a beacon of life and power in a galaxy that often feared what it did not understand. He prepared another meal for the dragon, knowing that each bite would not just feed its body, but strengthen its mind and abilities. The bond between them was growing, stronger than any force in the universe. And soon, Elias understood. The valley would no longer be a secret. Others would come, drawn by the dragon, by its power, and by the promise of change it represented. The dragon's eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight as it consumed the meal. Sparks of life danced across its scales, illuminating the valley. Elias watched closely, aware that this was not the end, but the beginning of something far greater. Together, they had survived the first test. Together, they would face what came next. Elias looked up at the sky, feeling both fear and exhilaration. The Watchers would return. The galaxy would take notice. And the dragon, his companion and friend, would grow stronger, perhaps beyond what even he could understand. But for now, the valley was theirs. For now, they had survived. And in the quiet aftermath, Elias felt something he had not felt in years. Hope, not just for himself, but for a galaxy that might one day see that even the smallest act of kindness, feeding a starving alien dragon, could challenge the greatest powers in the universe. The wind rustled through the valley, carrying the faint hum of life. The stars above twinkled knowingly, as if acknowledging that a new story had begun. And in the shadows, the dragon rested, watching over Elias, over the valley, and over a universe that was starting to notice that something extraordinary had awakened. The valley was quiet again, but the calm was deceptive. Elias knew the galactic authorities would return, and next time they would come prepared. The dragon, now fully aware of its strength and connection to Elias, waited patiently. It had grown stronger with each meal, and its intelligence had expanded beyond what any human could imagine. Elias studied the valley carefully. He had spent years as a chef, mastering timing, preparation, and strategy in the kitchen. Now, he realized those same skills could help him guide the dragon in a battle of survival. Each meal he prepared would fuel not just its body, but its mind and powers. He began arranging the valley strategically. Food was placed in patterns that would channel the dragon's energy, maximizing the protective power it radiated. Vines, rocks, and streams of water moved subtly, as if responding to the dragon's will, forming natural barriers and traps. Elias felt a thrill. This was not a battle of brute force, but of cunning, strategy, and understanding. At dawn, the horizon darkened with the approaching ships. This time they were larger, more numerous, and better armed. Metallic shapes glinted in the morning light, and a low hum of engines filled the air. The Watchers had learned from their previous attempt. They were ready to capture the dragon at all costs. Elias stood beside the dragon, holding another plate of food. He knew this meal would be crucial. As the dragon ate, sparks of light raced along its scales, brighter than ever before. The air around them vibrated with energy. Trees swayed violently, rocks levitated, and streams of water arced into the sky, forming shimmering barriers. The valley was alive, and every living thing within it responded to the dragon's power. The first wave of attackers advanced. Small drones zipped through the air, trying to pierce the natural barriers. But the dragon moved with precision, its wings cutting gusts of wind, its tail swinging with calculated force. Vines whipped at the drones, knocking them aside. Elias's strategy worked. The dragon's abilities were focused, directed, and unstoppable. The Watchers deployed larger ships, casting beams of energy across the valley. Elias realized that direct confrontation would not work. Instead, he needed to rely on the dragon's connection to life itself. He signaled to the dragon with subtle gestures, guiding its powers. Trees twisted into walls, streams surged to form barricades, and the very earth seemed to shift beneath the invaders' feet. One of the largest ships hovered above the valley, scanning for weakness. Elias's heart raced. The dragon glowed with golden light as it prepared for the final defense. It exhaled a low roar that shook the valley, and suddenly, the plants, water, and animals surged forward in a synchronized wave of energy. The ship trembled and faltered, unable to withstand the combined force of nature and alien power. Elias watched in awe. The dragon's intelligence was extraordinary. It understood his guidance, and together, they turned the valley into an impenetrable fortress. Sparks of light danced across the dragon's scales, illuminating the battlefield as if the stars themselves had descended to fight alongside them. The Watchers were stunned. They had never encountered a creature with such power, so closely guided by a human. Each attempt to advance was met with natural force, energy, and strategy they could not predict. Slowly, they began to retreat, realizing that this was no ordinary opponent. As the dust settled, Elias approached the dragon. Its eyes met his, glowing softly. No words were needed. The battle had been won, not through weapons, but through understanding, trust, and the unique bond between human and alien. But victory was only the beginning. News of the dragon's power spread quickly across nearby planets. Rumors of a human guiding an alien creature capable of reshaping life itself reached distant civilizations. Many were curious, others fearful, and some began to question the authority that had always ruled them. Elias realized that the valley had become more than a home. It was a symbol, a spark that could ignite change across the galaxy. The dragon, once weak and starving, had grown into a beacon of hope and strength. And together they had begun a cosmic revolution. That night, Elias prepared another meal, reflecting on the day's events. The dragon ate with grace and focus, and the valley responded with subtle pulses of light and energy. Elias understood that every meal, every act of care, every bond strengthened the dragon and the life around them. The revolution was not just in battle, it was in nurturing, in connection, in the idea that even the smallest actions could challenge the greatest powers. In the distance, small stars flickered as distant watchers observed from afar. The galactic authorities had retreated, but they would not forget this day. They had seen the potential of the dragon and the human guiding it. They would return stronger and more determined. Elias knew that this was just the start. The galaxy was vast, full of planets, species, and civilizations. The dragon's power could influence many, and Elias's wisdom could guide it. Together, they had the chance to change the balance of power, to challenge fear with hope, and to prove that compassion and intelligence could rival even the most advanced weapons. As the moon rose, Elias and the dragon stood together in the valley, watching the stars. The air hummed with life and energy, a quiet promise that the galaxy would never be the same. Every living thing in the valley thrived, connected to the dragon's power and Elias's guidance. The dragon's eyes glowed, and Elias smiled. They had faced their first true test. They had survived the Watchers and turned the valley into a fortress of life and hope. But the revolution was far from over. Across the galaxy, eyes would turn toward them. Allies would appear. Enemies would rise. And the bond between a retired chef and a once-starving alien dragon would become the spark that could reshape worlds. Elias prepared for the night, knowing that tomorrow, their journey would continue. Each meal, each act of care, each strategy would bring them closer to a new galactic order, a future where the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. And somewhere beyond the stars, the galaxy waited, unaware that its history was already shifting, one meal and one dragon at a time. The valley had never felt more alive. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, flowers glowed softly in the moonlight, and streams sparkled like liquid crystal. Animals roamed freely, and the air itself seemed to hum with energy. Elias stood on a small hill, looking out over the land he had once thought ordinary. Now it was extraordinary. The dragon rested beside him, wings folded, eyes glowing faintly. It had grown stronger, wiser, and more majestic than ever. The events of the past weeks had changed both of them. Elias, a retired chef, had become more than a simple human. He was a guide, a protector, and a friend to a creature capable of shaping life itself. Far beyond the valley, the galaxy was beginning to change. Word of the dragon and the human who guided it had spread. Planets that had lived in fear of oppressive forces now whispered of hope. Creatures long oppressed saw that strength could come from unity and trust, not just weapons and fear. The Watchers, the galactic authorities, had retreated for now, but the balance of power had shifted. Elias knew that the dragon's presence was more than a threat to the old order. It was a chance to build something new. Every meal he prepared, every act of care, strengthened the dragon, and through it, life across the galaxy. The simple act of feeding a starving creature had sparked a revolution far larger than he could have imagined. One morning, as the sun rose over the valley, a group of travelers arrived. They were from nearby planets, drawn by the stories of the dragon and its abilities. Some were curious, some fearful, but all were eager to witness the miracle that Elias had nurtured. Elias welcomed them cautiously, offering a warm meal and sharing his story. The dragon, sensing their intentions, remained calm but watchful. The visitors watched in awe as the valley seemed to respond to the dragon's presence. The water shimmered, flowers bloomed, and the air seemed alive with energy. "This is incredible," one of the travelers whispered. "It's like the planet itself is alive." Elias nodded. "It's not just the planet. It's the dragon, and it trusts us. Together, we can protect life, nurture growth, and inspire change." The visitors nodded, understanding that the power of the dragon was not meant for destruction, but for creation and guidance. Elias realized that the valley could become a hub of knowledge and cooperation, a place where species from across the galaxy could learn, grow, and unite. But peace was not guaranteed. Far away, the watchers observed silently. They had retreated, but they had not forgotten. They were plotting, waiting for the right moment to reclaim control. Elias knew that the dragon and he would need to remain vigilant. Yet he also understood that fear and control could no longer dominate the galaxy. Hope had taken root, and that was stronger than any weapon. As the days passed, Elias continued to prepare meals for the dragon. Each one was a small act of care, a spark of energy that strengthened both the creature and the life around them. The valley flourished like never before. Crops grew in abundance, streams teemed with fish, and animals thrived in harmony. It was a living testament to what kindness, trust, and cooperation could achieve. One evening, as the sky turned deep purple and the stars twinkled like diamonds, Elias and the dragon sat together atop a hill. The wind whispered gently, carrying the faint hum of energy from the valley below. Elias spoke softly, more to himself than to the dragon. Who would have thought a simple meal could change everything? The dragon lowered its massive head, eyes glowing softly, as if acknowledging him. Elias smiled. They had faced danger, survived the watchers, and ignited a revolution that had spread far beyond the valley. The galaxy had begun to shift, and they had been the spark. In the following weeks, more visitors arrived, scientists, explorers, and even diplomats from distant planets. They came to learn from Elias and the dragon, to understand the balance of life and energy that had transformed the valley. The story of a retired chef and a starving alien dragon became legend, inspiring hope across star systems. The watchers, observing from afar, began to reconsider their approach. They saw that control through fear was no longer effective. The dragon's power, guided by Elias, represented something new, something they could not simply destroy. Slowly, they began to step back, allowing planets to thrive under the dragon's influence and the guidance of those willing to nurture life. Elias realized that the valley and the galaxy had entered a new era. The dragon's presence had sparked a cosmic revolution, not through war, but through trust, care, and the bond between human and alien. He understood now that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple across the stars, changing lives in ways no one could predict. As the sun rose each day, Elias and the dragon continued their work. They nurtured life, shared knowledge, and strengthened bonds between species. The valley became a symbol, a living example of what was possible when compassion guided power. And yet, Elias knew their journey was not over. The galaxy was vast, full of mysteries, dangers, and opportunities. But together, he and the dragon were ready. Their bond was stronger than ever, a combination of human wisdom and alien power that could face whatever challenges lay ahead. One night, as the stars shimmered above, the dragon looked to the sky, wings stretched wide. Elias stood beside it, feeling the hum of energy and life around him. He understood that they were not just guardians of a valley. They were guardians of hope, catalysts for change, and witnesses to the birth of a new galactic order. The galaxy had been altered forever. Fear had been challenged by compassion, oppression replaced by guidance, and power tempered by trust. And in the heart of it all, a retired chef and a once-starving alien dragon had proven that even the simplest acts, sharing a meal, offering kindness, could spark a revolution that reached the stars. As the wind whispered through the valley and the streams shimmered in the moonlight, Elias smiled. The dragon's eyes met his, glowing softly with understanding. Together, they had changed the galaxy. Together, they would continue to protect life, nurture growth, and inspire hope across the stars. And somewhere, beyond the distant horizons, new adventures awaited. The galaxy was vast, full of possibilities, and Elias and the dragon were ready for whatever came next. Their story was far from over. It had only just begun.